greatest ride in my life was about to come up. A truck with a flatboard at the back with about 6 or 7 boys sprawled out on it. The drivers, 2 young blonde farmers from Minnesota, were picking up every single soul they found on that road. I ran up and said, "Is there room?" They said, "Sure, hop on. Room for everybody." I looked at the company. There were 2 young farmer boys from North Dakota in red baseball caps, and they were headed to the harvest. There were 2 young city boys from Columbus, Ohio, high school football players, chewing gum, winking, singing in the breeze. "We're going to L.A., they yelled. "What are you going to do there?" "Hell, we don't know. Who cares?" Then there was a tall, slim fellow who had a sneaky look. "Where are you from?" I asked. And he turned slowly when he opened his mouth and said, "Montana." Finally, there was Mississippi Gene in his charge. Mississippi Gene was a little dark guy who rode freight trains around the country. A hobo with a youthful look, so you couldn't tell exactly what age he was. His charge was a 16-year-old tall blonde kid. They wore old clothes that had been turned black by the soot of railroads and the dirt of boxcars. The blonde kid was quiet. He looked straight ahead and wet his lips in worried thought. I was glad when the farm boys who owned the truck decided to stop in North Platte and eat. "Piss calls," said one. "Time to eat," said the other. We all shambled after them to a restaurant, sat around over hamburgers and coffee, while they wrapped away enormous meals, just as if they were in their mother's kitchen. Everybody had joined them except the 2 hobo kids, Gene and his boy. When we all got back, they were still sitting in the truck, forlorn and disconsolate. Now the darkness was falling. The drivers had a smoke. I jumped at the chance to go buy a bottle of whiskey to keep warm in the rushing cold air of the night. They smiled when I told them, "Go ahead, hurry up." I felt something different in the air in North Platte. I didn't know what it was. In 5 minutes I did. We got back on the truck and roared off. It got dark quickly. We all had a shock, and suddenly I looked. The verdant farm fields and the Platte began to disappear, and in their stead, so far you couldn't see to the end, a long, flat wasteland of sand and sage. "What the hell is this?" I cried out to Slim. "This is the beginning of the rangelands, boy. Hand me another drink." Soon I realized I was a blast over Colorado, not officially in it, but looking southward towards Denver itself, a few hundred miles away. I yelled for joy. We passed the bottom. The great blazing stars came out. The far receding sandhills got dim. I felt like an arrow that could shoot out all the way. We came suddenly into the town of Oglala. 2 Dakota boys said goodbye to everybody and figured they'd start harvesting here. We watched them disappear in the night towards the shack at the end of town where the lights were burning. The truck was ready to go. It was getting on midnight now and cold. Mississippi Gene said the best thing to do now was for all of us to bundle up into the big tarpaulin or we'd freeze. In this manner, with the rest of the bottle, we kept warm as the air grew ice cold and pinged our ears. The stars seemed to get brighter the more we climbed the high plains. We were in Wyoming now. Flat on my back, I stared straight up at the magnificent firmament, glorying in the time I was making, and how far I had come from the sad, bare mountain after all, and tingling and kicked at the thought of what lay ahead of me in Denver. Whatever it would be. Montana Slim woke up and said to me, "Hey, how about you and me investigating Cheyenne tonight before you go on to Denver?" Sure thing, I was drunk enough to go for anything. As the truck reached the outskirts of Cheyenne, we saw the high red lights of the local radio station. And suddenly, we were bucking through a great crowd of people poured along both sidewalks. "Hell's bells, it's Wild West week," said Slim. We had to jump off the truck and say goodbye. The Minnesotans weren't interested in hanging around. It was sad to see them go, and I realized that I would never see any of them again. But that's the way it was. Silk dressing gown composing his latest Hemingwayan short story. A choleric, pudgy hater of everything, who could turn on the warmest and most charming smile in the world when real life confronted him in the night. And what business is that? Dean and I are embarked on a tremendous season together. We're trying to communicate with absolute honesty and absolute completeness everything on our minds. We've had to take Benzogen. I have finally taught Dean that he can do anything he wants. Become mayor of Denver, marry a millionaire, or become the greatest poet since Rambo. Carlo and I went through rickety streets of the Denver night. The air was soft, the stars so fine, the promise of every cobbled alley so great that I thought I was in a dream. Sat on the bed cross-legged and straight at each other. We began with an abstract thought, discussed it, reminded each other of another abstract point forgotten in the rush of events. Dean apologized, but promised that he could get back to it, manage it fine, bringing up illustrations. He was honest, specifically if he was being honest with him at the bottom of his soul. Why'd you bring that up? There's just one last thing I want to know. And on into the night they talked like this. At dawn I looked up. They were tying up the last of the morning's matters. When I said I had to sleep because of Mary's rule, that is, seeing her this morning at 10, I didn't bring my peremptory tone to bear in regard to what you just said about the unnecessariness of sleep. Only mind, because of the fact that I absolutely, simply, purely, and without any whatever, have to sleep now. I mean, man, my eyes are closing. They're red hot, sore, tired, beat. "Ah, child," said Carlo. "We'll just have to sleep now. Let's stop the machine."